Daniel had always loved old houses. There was something about the way they held memories, the faint whispers of lives long past. When he saw the small weathered house on the edge of town, he knew it was the one. It had peeling paint, creaky floorboards, and a garden that had been left to the wild, but Daniel didn't care. To him, it was perfect. He signed the papers quickly, excited to start a new chapter of his life, unaware that the house held secrets far stranger than he could imagine. The first few days were ordinary. Daniel cleaned the dusty rooms, fixed the broken windows, and wandered through the creaking halls, imagining what the house had been like decades ago. At night, he would lie awake, listening to the wind through the cracks, hearing the soft groans and sighs of a structure that had seen too much. But one evening, while moving a heavy bookshelf in the basement, something unusual caught his eye. It was a small, almost hidden hatch in the floorboards, the kind that could be easily overlooked. Curiosity got the better of him. He pulled at the worn wood, prying it open with a screwdriver. The smell hit him first, a strange mix of metal, earth, and something he couldn't place. Below the hatch was a tiny space, dark and confined. Daniel leaned closer and saw movement. At first he thought it was a stray animal, but then he saw her. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. A small girl, no taller than 3 feet, crouched inside a tiny metal cage. Her skin was pale, marked with scars that told stories of pain he could not imagine. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the dim light of the basement. Daniel froze, unsure of what to do. The girl looked at him with fear and caution. She made a small noise, something between a whimper and a whisper, and pressed herself further back into the cage. Daniel could feel his heart tighten. He had always considered himself brave, but seeing her like this, so vulnerable, awakened something deep inside him. He knelt by the cage, speaking softly, hoping she could understand him. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you," he said. His voice was calm, steady. She flinched but didn't run. That was a good sign. Daniel's mind raced. How had she ended up here? Who had done this to her? And, most importantly, what kind of being was she? She wasn't human, there was no doubt about that. Her limbs were delicate, her fingers long and nimble, and the shape of her head and ears were unlike anything he had seen. But despite her alien features, there was a fragility in her posture that made him want to protect her. He knew he couldn't just leave her in that cage. Daniel spent the next hour cautiously checking the cage for weaknesses, assessing whether he could open it without causing her harm. He found a small latch on the side. It looked old but functional. His hands trembled slightly as he moved it. The girl flinched and hissed softly, a sound he realized was her way of warning him. "It's okay," he whispered again. "I'm here to help." He opened the cage slowly, letting the door swing wide. The girl stayed in the corner, unsure. Daniel reached in carefully, offering his hand. She stared at it, then at him, her eyes wide and unblinking. After what felt like an eternity, she inched forward and placed her small hand on his. It was cold, almost icy, but he didn't pull away. "You're safe now," he said. "I'll take care of you." Over the next few days, Daniel focused on earning her trust. He brought water and food, improvising with what he had. The girl seemed to understand his gestures. She didn't speak, or at least not in any language he recognized, but she could communicate in her own way, pointing, nodding, shaking her head, and even touching her scars when she wanted him to help. Daniel gave her a name, Leora. It felt right, soft and light, and he hoped it would make her feel more human, more accepted. Leora began to respond more openly. She would reach for him when she wanted help, and sometimes she would even smile faintly, showing tiny, sharp teeth that looked alien but friendly. At night, Daniel would lie awake thinking about her. How had she ended up in a cage under this house? The scratches on her skin suggested a long history of pain. The symbols etched into the walls of her cage hinted at a culture he couldn't understand. He needed answers, but he also needed to keep her safe. Then the first sign of danger appeared. One evening, as Daniel was bringing Leora a bowl of food, he heard footsteps outside the basement door. Slow, deliberate, and heavy. He froze, glancing at the small girl. Her eyes widened in fear, and she crouched behind a corner of her cage. Daniel held his breath. Whoever was coming might not understand what he was doing, or worse, might want to reclaim her. He thought quickly and whispered, "Stay quiet. Don't move." The footsteps stopped. A shadow fell over the basement door. Daniel's mind raced. He needed a plan. Quietly, He pulled Leora into his arms and moved toward a small hidden closet in the corner. The footsteps returned, moving down the stairs slowly. Daniel held his breath, pressing Leora close. She trembled but didn't cry. The person at the stairs spoke, a low voice Daniel didn't recognize. "I know she's here. Don't think you can hide her." Daniel's heart pounded. He couldn't fight whoever it was, at least not directly, but he had something they didn't: human ingenuity and courage. He noticed the old water heater and some loose pipes nearby. Quietly, he grabbed a wrench and loosened a pipe just enough so that when the person came closer, a loud clang would startle them. When the intruder stepped into the basement, Daniel let the pipe fall, creating a deafening noise. The person shouted, stumbled, and Daniel took the moment to slip past them, Leora still in his arms, into the hidden closet. The intruder searched the basement, confused, but eventually gave up. Daniel and Leora stayed hidden for hours until he was sure it was safe. After that night, Daniel realized that keeping Leora safe would not be easy. He needed a more permanent solution, a way to heal her wounds, gain her full trust, and protect her from anyone who might come looking. He started researching alien biology as best as he could. The internet had little, but books on biology, anatomy, and psychology gave him a starting point. He improvised treatments for her scars, cleaning and dressing them carefully, watching as she slowly healed. During this time, their bond grew stronger. Leora began to mimic Daniel's gestures, learning simple signs and expressions. She laughed softly when he made funny faces, and sometimes she even tried to speak, forming strange syllables that Daniel repeated back to her. Their communication was slow but genuine. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's confidence grew. He discovered that Leora had small natural abilities. She could move faster than a human, and her reflexes were sharp. She could sense subtle changes in her environment that Daniel couldn't, like vibrations in the floor or faint sounds from far away. He realized that she wasn't just a helpless creature. She was intelligent, capable, and extraordinary. Yet the scars on her body reminded him that her past was dangerous. Whoever had put her in the cage had done more than imprison her. They had tried to erase her spirit. Daniel vowed that he would not let that happen. Humanity had a reputation for resilience and compassion, and he intended to prove it. One evening, as they sat together in the basement, Leora finally touched his face, a gesture of trust and affection. Daniel smiled, tears welling up in his eyes. He whispered, "We'll get through this. I promise." Leora responded with a small glowing smile, and for the first time, Daniel felt that the old house wasn't just a place of mystery. It was a home where human courage and kindness could create a safe haven for a being from another world. But outside, shadows still lingered. Unknown forces had left her in that cage, and some of them might still be searching. Daniel knew that the coming days would test every bit of his wit, bravery, and humanity. He also knew one thing for certain: he would never let anyone take her away. Not now, not ever. And so life in the old house began anew. Daniel and Leora, two unlikely companions, began a journey of healing, trust, and discovery. Each day brought new challenges, but it also brought hope. For the first time, Leora laughed freely, and Daniel realized that even in the darkest corners of the universe, human empathy, ingenuity, and courage could light the way. Days passed in the old house, each one bringing Daniel and Leora closer. The small alien girl had started to explore her new surroundings cautiously, her luminous eyes scanning every corner of the basement and main floor. Daniel had made her a small bed from blankets and cushions, and she had begun to treat it as her own space, though she often stayed close to him. It was clear that trust was growing, slowly but surely. Daniel had started to call in small favors from friends without revealing too much. He needed supplies, bandages, and equipment to tend to Leora's scars, and he had to learn about her biology to avoid accidentally harming her. Despite the lack of information about her species, he improvised. He observed her reactions carefully, adjusting the temperature of her food, the way he cleaned her wounds, and even the position in which he carried her. Every gesture, every careful step, strengthened the fragile bond between them. One morning, Daniel found Leora staring out the basement window, the sunlight highlighting the faint glow of her skin. She had never seen much of the outside world, and the sight of trees, birds, and the sky seemed to mesmerize her. Daniel watched quietly, not wanting to disturb her moment of wonder. Then slowly she turned to him and made a gesture he recognized, pointing to the door and then to herself. He realized she wanted to see more, to explore beyond the house. Daniel hesitated. The world outside could be dangerous. There were still people who might want to capture her, but he also knew she couldn't remain hidden forever. He nodded and whispered, "We'll be careful. I'll protect you." Leora's small hand touched his face in understanding, and they prepared to venture outside together. The first walk into the garden was cautious. Leora moved silently, her small feet barely making a sound on the grass. Daniel kept close, alert to any sign of trouble. She stopped frequently, fascinated by insects, flowers, and the way sunlight danced through the leaves. It was a moment of pure joy, and Daniel felt a swell of pride and relief. He realized that even in a universe full of unknown dangers, there were moments of simple beauty that humans and aliens alike could share. But peace never lasted long. One afternoon, while Daniel was repairing a small section of the fence, he noticed a figure lurking at the edge of the property. The person was tall, cloaked, and moved with deliberate caution. Daniel's heart raced. Whoever had imprisoned Leora before might have found a way to track her. He quickly signaled to Leora to hide behind the shed. She understood immediately, her eyes wide with fear. Daniel assessed the situation. The figure was watching, waiting, testing his reaction. He needed a plan. He grabbed a bucket of water and, without hesitation, splashed it near the intruder. The sudden movement startled them, and Daniel seized the moment to usher Leora quietly toward the back of the house. They slipped into a hidden shed, where he had already prepared supplies and a safe spot for her to hide. The intruder searched for a while but eventually left, likely convinced that the house held nothing. Daniel knew this was only a temporary reprieve. They couldn't stay here forever. He decided it was time to find a more permanent solution for Leora's safety. He had read about hidden underground bunkers and remote properties where someone could live unnoticed. It would take planning, resources, and courage, but Daniel was determined. At night, they sat together in the basement. Leora had begun to speak slowly, forming small words in a strange combination of her language and Daniel's. He could understand some of it, enough to know that she was grateful for his protection and care. She also hinted at a place she had been taken from, a distant world that seemed to be her home. Daniel realized that helping her wasn't just about safety. It was about giving her a chance to reclaim her life. Over the next weeks, Daniel prepared. He gathered supplies, studied maps, and even built a small vehicle capable of carrying both of them to a safer location. He taught Leora simple strategies for staying hidden, observing the world around her and communicating silently. She learned quickly, her intelligence and reflexes proving far beyond what Daniel had expected. It was during these training sessions that he realized humanity's strength wasn't just in physical skill but in adaptability, creativity, and empathy, the very traits that allowed him to understand and protect someone so different from himself. The day of departure arrived. Daniel carried Leora carefully to the vehicle he had hidden behind the overgrown garden. She looked at the house one last time, her glowing eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and hope. Daniel whispered, "It's going to be okay. We'll find a place where you can be free." Leora reached up and touched his cheek, a silent promise of trust and friendship. The journey was tense. Every road, every turn brought the possibility of discovery. Yet Daniel remained calm, guiding the vehicle carefully while Leora stayed alert, pointing out dangers he might have missed. Along the way they passed towns and forests, rivers and hills, each scene a reminder of the world they were protecting and the life they were trying to build. One evening, as they rested near a quiet stream, Leora finally spoke more clearly. "Home, far," she said, pointing to the stars above. Daniel understood. She wanted to return to her world, or at least to a place where she could belong. He promised her that they would find it together. Their path led them to an abandoned research facility in a remote area. It had been long forgotten, overgrown and decaying, but it was perfect. Daniel cleaned it, reinforced doors and windows, and even restored some of the old technology. Leora explored cautiously, finally finding a space she could call her own. For the first time she seemed truly at ease, smiling brightly, her scars less visible under the care and light that surrounded her. But danger was not completely gone. Strange signals, faint and distant, hinted at the presence of others who might seek her. Daniel knew they could not stay indefinitely, yet he also knew that their bond, built on trust, courage, and understanding, was stronger than fear. Together they could face whatever came. One night under the stars, Daniel and Leora sat outside the facility. She held his hand, her small fingers curling around his. She spoke softly in her mixed language, words he could almost understand. Safe. Because you, human. Daniel smiled, understanding fully. It wasn't just about protection. It was about hope, friendship, and the strength of humanity. The story ends with a sense of promise. Leora was free from her cage, her trust in Daniel unwavering, and Daniel had discovered that being human meant more than strength or skill. It meant courage, empathy, and the ability to connect with even the most alien of beings. Together they would face the universe, exploring its wonders and protecting its mysteries, a testament to the power of human spirit and kindness in a world full of the unknown. From that day forward, the old house was no longer a place of secrets. It had been a beginning, the start of a journey that would take Daniel and Leora far beyond anything either of them could imagine. The world was vast and danger remained, but so did hope. And with hope, anything was possible.